It is the Zach Martin Show on New HD TV. I am with one of my favorite guests of all time, one of my great friends. We go back a long way. I'm on one of his dust covers, a book about Joni Mitchell. I wung it. I winged it, whatever you want to call it. But I'm proud to be on one of your books. You've written over, I don't know how many books you've written.
66.
66.
66. Yes.
The first one was Barry Manilow.
You're right. You're right. Okay. You win.
Then you did one about Michael Jackson.
That was the fourth one. I did one about the Doobie Brothers and one about the Captain and Tennille.
Oh, that's right. Captain and Tennille was your second, right? Yeah, I got it. All right.
Yes.
But we're talking today from your abode in lovely Phoenix area, right?
Tucson, actually. Tucson.
Yeah.
Close.
Everybody goes Tucson, Phoenix, don't they? Phoenix, Tucson, something like that.
Well, they're easily mixed up because it's like that big city in Arizona. So we're actually the second largest city. So
the funniest thing I find about Arizona, when I was growing up, I used to go to Lake Havasu City in the summertime, and a lot of people from the East Coast would move to Arizona for, I guess, for the reasons of asthma and allergies.
Right.
So because the air was good for someone that had lung issues. And the people from the East got the bright idea of planting grass on their lawns.
Oh, yes.
Sort of defeated the purpose of moving to
Phoenix.
Arizona.
Is full of it. And they have so many lawns and so many man-made lakes in the middle of subdivisions that the humidity is high.
Right.
It's much higher than it was. And that purpose is all gone.
Well, people would say, but it's a dry heat. And I would say to them, I go, look, hot is hot, number one. Number two, if you're near a lake in Arizona and it's that hot, it's also dry, plus a little bit of humidity. So that really makes it uncomfortable. So whoever the geniuses are that move from wherever, I guess it's like My Blue Heaven. Remember that movie?
Yes, I do.
The lobsters. All right, let's talk about Eat Like a Rock Star, which is one of my favorite books. I think it's top 5 on Amazon right now.
Number 3 when I looked this morning. Yes.
Holy cow.
Yes. Moving on up.
I wonder why he's so happy.
Yes,
the Brinks trucks show up twice a day delivering bags of money.
I have my new paperback version now in the stores.
Yeah, you got that one nicely wrapped too. So
it's beautiful. They did a beautiful job. They really did. Sorry, I digress.
What do you think? Like why didn't you just release it paperback to begin with? What's going through an author's mind when they say hard book and then paperback? It's
the publishers. It's usually the publishers who make these decisions. They submit the ideas or the proposals to the bookstores and whatever flies. Of course, with hardcover, now this is traditional in the book business. Some people really want a hardcover and they're going to buy theirs first, and it costs more money. And it costs more money to produce them. So what they do is they get the hardcover sale out there, see how it does, and then see if it's worthy of an additional paperback version. And apparently it was, because it hit the top 10 before, and now it's number 3 in Amazon. So
okay, how many number 1 books have you ever had?
I've had 3 in a row.
Wow, really? You're the Beatles of writing.
Yeah. Exactly. I had my Aretha Franklin, Queen of Soul, the tribute edition, hit number 1 the week of her funeral. Everyone was curious about her life story. So that's what happens. I mean, that's what the press writes about, because that's the top story. So there was my book, right in time for it, so people could get her entire story, find out her entire legacy. So that was number 1 in Amazon. Then about 11 months later, my book with Mary Wilson of the Supremes, which is called Supreme Glamour, which I just happen to have a glamorous copy here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That went to number 1 on both sides of the Atlantic, and was on 7 different lists at number 1 at once, which was fabulous. Then I did a book with a business owner who owns the Lux Hotels in Los Angeles, and we hit number 1 on the business book section a year ago, September. So that was Aretha, Mary Wilson, and Ephraim Harkham's book about living the Lux life, which hit number 1 too as well. So 3 number ones in a row, and then a top 10 with my Elton John book, my redone Rocket Man book, which came out in January, and that hit the top 10. And now I'm back in the top 10. So I'm Mr. Top 10 author suddenly.
Good for you. Not too many people can say that. You talked about Rocket Man, Elton John. When you were doing that book, I think that this is a reissue of the Rocket Man, right? Is this the second edition?
It is. I had done it in 2009 called The Bitch Is Back. And it was one of those things where the book comes out and the company promptly goes bankrupt.
Oh, gosh, that sucks. And you know, like me as a kid, it's got bitch in the title. I'm going to buy it.
Well, I think bitch is so overused that it's not shocking.
Yeah, now it is, yeah. All right. What was the one thing about Elton John that you thought to yourself, wow, that's really kind of sad? And what was the thing like, wow, I'm really happy for him? What were two things that were polar opposite in your feeling in writing that book when you
well, one of the sad things, and I just saw a recent interview with him dated approximately 1978, 1979, and he looked so unhappy. And he'd had that huge streak of number ones. Unlike me, I'm very happy. he had that huge streak of number ones and felt like he was just completely worn out, was conflicted about where his career was going. Everyone wanted a piece of him. He couldn't produce music quick enough, and he looked so unhappy. And that was the height of his drugs and liquor phase. Started out right there. So that was very unhappy to read about and to write about. Like, how could you have so much that people want? You know, people would love to be a rock star and live Elton John's life, and here he is miserable about it. So it's a funny thing about show business.
Well, there's a couple of points to that. Imagine if you are an astronaut, you're Neil Armstrong, and you land on the moon, and you get back from landing on the moon. What else is there to do? I mean, you've gone to the moon. You're the first person on the moon. You flew in that rocket ship. Even if you became the president of the United States, that's still not as exciting as being the first man on the moon. So, and then Buzz Aldrin, the second man, who, by the way, if I was Buzz, I would have pushed Neil out of the way and jumped out in front of him.
Get off!
What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Court-martial me? But he had some problems after that with alcohol, and I guess, you know, like feeling the same way. You get to be a famous rock star, and you have a series of number ones, and then, you know, do you got to keep doing that streak? I mean, so I could see where that could be problematic. You hit the number one, you hit the high water mark. Now you gotta meet everybody's expectations over and over again. Right.
Well, case in point, I recently watched the Bee Gees documentary that has been on, and it's really good, very interesting. And of course, it has a very sad ending because Morris dies, Robin dies, little brother Andy passed away ages ago, and here's Barry Gibb with all this money and all this fame, and his brothers are all gone, and they were so close. And he shifted gears after the huge success of Saturday Night Fever and doing the music for that and all those million sellers and the group reinventing themselves several times. So what he did was he went into production and produced that fabulous Barbra Streisand album, repeated it with Dionne Warwick's Heartbreaker album, and redefined himself as a singer-songwriter. So I think the creative people who are able to maybe take their initial success and then do something else with it that is equally satisfying on an artistic in an artistic plane, that they end up happy. I mean, I've never had, I mean, I did have some depression when I had New York Times bestsellers, and then a year later it was like, well, this latest book didn't do so well. But if you like what it is you're doing, which I do enjoy what it is I do, I think you're able to rebuild again, or never find that you've been knocked down personally. So I mean, the money ebbs and flows, and the number ones ebb and flow. But if you love what you're doing, then you don't have a problem.
Well, that's a good point. Especially under COVID-19, I think all of us are trying to relearn how to move forward. We'll just say move forward. And you've seen my career take its ups and downs over the years, but I never really let it beat me. And then, along the way, I took jobs I really didn't like, but I thought to myself, well, it's better than doing nothing. And then,
Exactly.
reinventing myself along the way. So these are good life lessons that we could share with anybody that's listening or watching. We're with Mark Bego, author of 66 books, including that about Barry Manilow, as well as Michael Jackson, various other greats, Joni Mitchell, which you should buy because I'm on the dust cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, Eat Like a Rock Star. Now, go on, pick up the book, Eat Like a Rock Star, and tell us the list of some of the rock stars that are included in this great best-selling book. It's available on Amazon.com at position number 3. By the end of this broadcast, it'll be up to number 1 again.
Well, I'm going to back it up a little ways. When I was a kid growing up, the first albums I bought and the first rock stars I idolized were Three Dog Night, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Supremes, and I ended up with Mary Wilson of the Supremes giving me a recipe for Eat Like a Rock Star. I ended up with Bill Wyman giving me a recipe for Eat Like a Rock Star. Jimmy Greenspoon from Three Dog Night. The Monkees. I loved the Monkees back when I was a teenager. Love them now. Got a Mickey Dolenz recipe.
Yes,
so I was
able
to utilize all of my contacts from many decades, I won't count them, many decades since the 70s of interviewing rock stars. And I found that the majority of them were like, oh, you're doing a cookbook? Oh, I've got a recipe for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of their life. Yeah.
My fabulous darling Martha Reeves, who I adore. She was one of the first people to give me a recipe. Just absolutely.
Well, I think when you do the next edition, leave some room for me because I got a few good ones. We've talked about this before, where I can make marvelous dishes out of pasta, cheese, and peas. Pasta, cheese, and peas.
That's actually Michael McDonald's favorite. He's got a recipe for that in the cookbook. So,
5 minutes, I just keep moving on. And then when you make the dish by Michael McDonald, do you start singing Michael McDonald songs? I imagine you would.
Smoky voice.
You mentioned Bill Wyman, who I've interviewed in the past. I find him a very interesting person. By the way, the reason why he did his whole book about the Rolling Stones is he was collecting items from the Rolling Stones early on, so that he would have proof to his kids that he was actually in a rock band. He never expected it to be successful. So I thought that was funny.
That's amazing.
His contribution to your Eat Like a Rock Star, I find that very unlike Bill Wyman. Tell us what the recipe is.
Well, it's lamb chops, and he's got a salad with it as well that he serves it with. And the funny thing was, I was on a road trip with Mary Wilson of the Supreme. She invited, so you got to come on this road trip. We're doing a bus tour of Europe. Bill Wyman and his band, me, meaning her, and you've got to come. So I was like, okay, I'm buying a ticket. Here I come. And I said, well, how do I travel about from city to city? What are you guys doing? No, you'll be on the bus with us, and you'll stay in the hotel with us. I was like, okay, I'm in. So Bill has old friends with Mary, and he has spent a lot of time with her. And then I suddenly show up, this old friend of hers, and he was kind of like, who is this guy? And I'm not sure if I'm really, into this guy. And so I sat down with him one day, and I was on the bus, and I said, I kind of got chatty with him, and he kind of warmed up. And I said, Bill, I'm doing this rock and roll cookbook, and I know you've got a recipe in you. He goes, oh no. The only thing I make is a cup of tea. I said, Bill, you've got to make something more than that. No, I really don't, except these lamb chops. I was like, okay, how do you make these lamb chops? So I got the recipe out of him. So, everybody's got something favorite that they want to do. And I was happy to get that and get one of the Rolling Stones in my book. So I think it's a marvelous contribution.
Let's talk about lamb chops. Not one of my favorite foods, but a couple years ago, my sister-in-law made some for one of the holidays, and I was reluctant to taste it, but I thought, oh, what the hell, might as well try it. And she roasted it, and it was delicious, and I could handle it that way. Lamb chops only work if they're roasted or over a flaming pit, as far as I'm concerned. Do not put them in a toaster oven.
No. They're not
don't do that.
Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, or well, those oven toasters where people will cook meat in it, disgusting. Okay,
you can't do that. Then you end up with a raw meal.
Right? You have to have it broiled. You put it in the pan, it's sort of disgusting too. What is Bill's trick for making lamb chops work?
Well, searing them is what he said. You know,
See, okay, yeah.
if you've got the option of searing them, that's the best. But pan frying will work. You know, if you know how to do it, if you got the right scorch, you know, like a cast iron pan, you get a nice brown on it. You can put them in the oven. You know, any way of that works. And lamb, as you said, I mean, that's something that it's not one of my go-to things. And I also have another lamb recipe in Eat Like a Rock Star that Marilyn McCoo gave me. And I have never gone out and bought a leg of lamb. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually a leg of lamb. And she recommends marinating it for 24 hours, which really does a number on it. The meat tastes so good. It's so moist that even lamb, people that are not into lamb would like this recipe, I think.
I'm sure that Marilyn McCoo would bring that lamb to the fifth dimension.
Yeah, exactly. She'd take it up and away, baby.
Yeah. That's fantastic. All right, how about Mary Williams? Mary Wilson's.
Mary,
talk about her.
Well, we started talking about omelets one day, and I said, you know, have you ever had a caviar omelet? She goes, oh, I love caviar omelets. Here's what I put in mine. I said, would you put in this, that, and the other thing? She goes, no, I put in this, that, you know, and she had her own list of things, very specific for a caviar omelet. I think that is wonderful.
That's
one of our recipes.
I'm gonna call it interesting. And I will leave it to the imagination of the person who buys Eat Like a Rock Star to make it themselves. As you know, I'm in the Russian circles here in New York, and usually skip the caviar. But my daughter loves it. So
caviar and sour cream in an omelet. There was a place on West 57th Street, not to digress to New York, but everything comes back to New York where I lived for so many years. But there was a place on East 57th Street that had a caviar omelet on their menu. It was the first time I'd ever had it. And it was so good with, you know, chopped scallions and the sour cream and, oh, just so good. I mean, that if you want to do something decadent for yourself, and it doesn't have to be the expensive caviar. It's, you know, whatever caviar you like.
Okay, so that brings us to another thing about
traditional and get it.
Traditional cooking. And the way our grandmothers would cook was to hide the cheap meats or the lack of meats, or, you know, if it was the cheap caviar, they put it together so that they would meld all of these different spices and things together so that it was palatable. That's what you do with those kind of things.
Well, absolutely.
That's part of cooking.
Either you like caviar or you don't. I'm doing a book with Frida Payne at the moment called Band of Gold, which I'm going back to food in a moment, which comes out in September of 2021. And she's got some great stories in it, which is a whole other story. But she's someone who's like, oh, I don't like that black caviar. I like the gray, you know, beluga. I was like, well, of course you do, you know. But the black stuff from my grocery store is good for me. You know, I like it still.
So, all right. So
you can pump it up. You know, you can make a shrimp salad sandwich, or you could make a lobster salad sandwich. They're both delicious. So
yeah, well, it depends on
your budget
and what you put in there. So you got something in everybody's budget range. When it comes to just making a good old fashioned omelet, let me just tell you, I usually use 3 eggs. I beat them. Okay, yep. I don't add anything to them. I beat them really nice, and then I take my nonstick frying pan. Okay.
An 8-inch nonstick is the best.
The bigger, well, I use the bigger one, whatever.
Oh, the bigger one. Okay, you get them to stand still. So you could do it kind of thin then. You do it a thinner.
Well, you know what? With the way I fluff it up, it actually, when I add the cheese to it and maybe some ham or whatever, and then I fold it over once, it becomes really nice and fluffy.
Oh, nice. Oh, that is nice.
The key to it is not to brown it too much. You want to try to keep that yellowish color by not letting it burn. So that's one good thing. And then the other thing is learning how to just flip it over nicely so it keeps together. And then when you're cooking, make sure that your toast is done before you even start to whip your eggs, because it takes the toast usually a little while before, you know, you don't want your eggs done too soon and the toast not done. Because I
agree.
So you got to learn how to time it out. So friends, if you're going to make your omelet and you want some toast, whatever that toast might be, Put your bread in the toaster. You don't put toast in the toaster. Don't let anybody trip you up with that one. And give it a couple of minutes and then start to go through your routine of making the eggs. And it's very important to be a clean and efficient cook, meaning that as soon as you take those eggshells, throw them right out in the garbage, clean up after yourself, because it reduces food type of illness when you do that, right?
Contamination. So yeah, what I do is I take one of those plastic grocery bags or one of the ones that you put your produce in at the supermarket or they come in, and I'll put one in the sink, and I'll, as I'm taking my eggshells, I dump them right there and then just throw the whole bag away, whatever it is I put in this omelet. But I made I made my own egg McMuffin the other day, and what you said is absolutely right. I like the English muffin nice and crunchy with some like dark edges. So I'll do like one drop of it, get it going, get the omelet set up. And then as the egg starts to cook, then I push it down again and it pops up about the same time the omelet's done. So timing is everything with egg dishes. Definitely.
We're about to get into a controversial subject about food here in New Jersey. Pork roll, Taylor ham. What do you say, Mark Bego?
Well, there is a tradition with people buying those honey baked hams or making a ham or making their version of a honey baked ham. But I have seen some recipes recently, and I haven't really done it, where porchetta is one of the recipes where you roll it into a tide roast. And those people, it looked fabulous. I've never done it because I usually don't have that many people to serve, but I'll have to try that, I think.
Well, see, this is a little bit out there because this is a New Jersey specific. This would be New Jersey Scrapple. Scrapple is something that,
which is kind of like spam-ish in a way.
But what Scrapple's made out of, you don't want to know the ingredients. Sort of like you don't want to know how they make hot dogs. But the Taylor ham,
eyeballs, as they say.
There's a product in New Jersey called pork roll, and its name is Taylor's pork roll. And a lot of people from northern New Jersey would call it Taylor ham, and southern New Jersey calls it pork roll. And believe me, you can get on Twitter and start a humongous fight between people of New Jersey over pork roll and Taylor ham. And it's great with Taylor ham, egg, and cheese on a hard roll, or pork roll, ham and cheese on a hard roll. And there's various other recipes you could do with it. It's high in fat, unfortunately, but tastes great as usual. Things high in fat usually do. So maybe that's one of those recipes we can put from New Jersey, or have a New Jersey artist that likes it down the road, like Bruce Springsteen.
There probably. Bruce, got my birthday. We're both born September 23rd. Bruce, I need a recipe.
Unfortunately, we don't want Bruce in our book because he angers me that he's in his 70s and he takes his shirt off and he looks great. I don't need that. I don't need that pressure to look like the boss. No, you're out of the guys club. Show off.
That's too funny.
It'd be great if Bruce Springsteen. Now, Bon Jovi does have a place called Soul Kitchen in Red Bank, New Jersey, in which you pay what you feel the value of the meal is worth, and it helps people.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, that's really nice. So he's another one that you should probably approach when you do. You got to have a volume too.
Well, absolutely. I started collecting recipes. I got a great recipe from Petula Clark. I ran into someone on the internet.
You run into her when she was going downtown or
downtown.
Now, you want to know something musically interesting? We had Petula Clark in the studio a couple years ago, and in her mid 80s, still on tour.
Yep.
And I wanted my daughter to meet her, so I made sure that Sophie was there, my wife was there, and Petula walks in, and I'm a rock guy, so I had a syndicated rock show. Petula Clark on a rock. Trust me on this one, boys. Trust me. So we're talking, and she's friends with Jimmy Page. And it turns out that on Downtown, Jimmy Page is playing guitar for her.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
That's amazing.
So, that's something you can talk about on a rock station and maybe play Jimmy Page, or even at that point, I'm going to play Downtown by Petula Clark. Here's the other thing that people don't know about her. She was having trouble in her career. She was up in Canada, and you had to either sing in French or English, and no matter what you did, it was the wrong answer. So she found out that John Lennon and Yoko were doing the bed-in true, but I'm not so sure she knew about the bed-in, but she found out where they're staying. She gets to go see John and Yoko, and she's talking about this issue. And now I'm swirling, as you can see. It's so wonderful. She talks to him about this issue of what she's going through, and he gives some good advice. Well, it's at the time where they start recording. All we are saying is give peace a chance, and Petula Clark is one of the vocalists on that song.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
how about
amazing.
that?
That's
So,
amazing.
Now that we've talked about Petula, lovely lady,
And she
very
makes
English.
a great cauliflower. That's going to be in volume 2. It's excellent.
So we will not talk about that recipe. If you want to see that recipe, you got to get in volume 2. Are you almost done with volume 2?
Not quite. I am cooking. I'm working on it. It's still malleable.
There is room for me in this.
That's true.
Come on, a rock and roll disc jockey has to be featured, because we spend our life thinking of, how do I take all of these ingredients, because this is all I can afford, and make them into a feast.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's why the show Chopped is so key, and people love Chopped, is because they're forced to make things out of what's in that basket. Well, how many times have we stood in front of our refrigerators and gone, let me see, there must be something I can make out of all this.
Well, how many times, you're getting old when you go to the refrigerator and you forgot what you're looking for. You close the door and you open it again, like, what am I looking for? And then you repeat the process several times. That's when your kids are starting to think, what good old folks home should I put my dad in? All right.
Well, this week I'm going to be making cookies. I've got a cookie factory going. So it's time for a cookie exchange. And I'm making 8 dozen cookies on Thursday. So I've got the racks ready.
And who's going to eat the cookies?
Well, we're going to exchange cookies, and we'll see what everybody. We'll see how many make it to my house.
You're unbelievable. All right, let's talk about some of the other people that are in this book. So we did Bill Wyman. We talked about Mary's and her eggs with the caviar.
Yes.
We talked about Marilyn McCoo and her fifth dimension leg of lamb. That has to be marinated. Did anybody else really surprise you? Maybe come up with something like peanut butter and jelly, but done this way, kind of a deal?
Well, not real. Well, let me see. Dennis D. Young from Styx gave me a salad dressing recipe, and I thought, is that all there is? But you know what? People need a salad dressing recipe, and
gotta
it's
have a good salad dressing. Yeah,
exactly. If you're at home and you've run out of pre-made salad dressing, there's a great one in there. Speaking of eggs, Ray Parker Jr. Love Ray Parker Jr. Got a great salmon and eggs recipe, and Debbie Gibson is into health food, and she does a fabulous biscuits. I never made biscuits from scratch, and they're so good, and they use coconut oil, which I'd never cooked with before. And they taste so good, and they don't taste like a macaroon at all. The coconut oil in them are just really good. They're nice and light and fluffy and really, really good.
Well, if you eat like her, you're going to be in good shape, right?
She takes good care of herself, and
she really does.
Looks fabulous. And she's
so
an
jealous.
So
jealous. She also has a bison burger or something with bison, right?
Yes, she likes bison. And when I made that, it was really good. It was really quite good. So, a lot of people now, venison is not something I go for. Thankfully, no one threw me a venison recipe.
Well, you see, venison will work if it's spiced right. Like you can have venison sausage or meatballs, but it's the spices. Again, grandma's cooking, how they would mask that wild flavor that you might not be used to.
Rosemary.
Rosemary, right. So, and that's good for roasting. And by the way, with a bison, with buffalo, this is another one of those things that's best to be on a barbecue grill.
Yes.
You do not want to fry these in a pan. They do not come out well when you do that. Certain things are.
I find you can find a stovetop grill pan and get that baby.
Those are good.
Hot. They're really nice.
That'll work.
Nice. And those I don't have a George Foreman per se grill, but I've got one of those, and those can be good too.
Those are really good for burgers. Mark my word on this. My wife would laugh at this story. When we were first married, it was one of those days, I think it was in November, and when the fog is in the air and it gets through the house?
Yes.
Right? So whatever the kitchen smells are, they stay in there.
It lingers, yes.
Right, it lingers. And I decided to treat my wife to a nice salmon dish. And the salmon, which I've eaten many times before, was bad. It was bad salmon, real fishy smell, right? I think of that and I still gag. So we used it on the George Foreman grill. And well, that fish smell never went away.
God. Oh God.
Every time I sniffed it, I got sick. I mean, it was a repeat of like that disagreeable thing. So, and the smell stayed. So the next couple of days go by and I'm trying the George Foreman grill again. The smell's still there. It ruined it for the rest of its life. So just stick to hamburgers, all right? Or just one kind of meat. Just stick to whatever it is. So a couple days go by after I get all of it. I throw out the grill. Got to get another one at this point.
Can you buy the surfaces, the actual surfaces? You just threw the whole thing away.
With it. I mean, it's $40.
Get out of here.
So I end up doing the dishes a couple of days later, and I take the same rag that I used to clean. I went, oh, my face, and it was all over again. So to this day,
God,
I cannot get anywhere near salmon, and I'm a seafood guy, right?
Wow.
I mean, I've had to keep myself in check. Even one time I was going out with little Steven and he wanted some lox for breakfast. I was like, I had to so salmon's off my menu, but that's great because you have so many other things that you can throw in there. We go back to the George Foreman grill. Great place to make your hamburgers. Great place for sausage links.
Or paninis, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
The reason I got this is I was working on a book that has never been published, and it was with one of Elvis Presley's Memphis Mafia guys, Lamar Fike. And I would go to Dallas. The book is fabulous, but we can't seem to place it anywhere, and it's a whole complicated story. But when I went there, he had one of these grills, and he said, I don't know how to use it. Do you know what to do? I was like, oh, yeah. I said, let's get some sandwich stuff, and we're going to make some fabulous paninis. And you get bread, and I don't know if everyone realizes this, but the way you get those fabulous grill marks, you spread mayonnaise on the outside of the bread because mayonnaise is eggs, and it's going to get those nice stripes because the eggs cook on the outside while the cheese is melting on the inside. You get fabulous grill marks. And we would get turkey and coleslaw and sun-dried tomatoes and Swiss cheese and make the most fabulous paninis in this thing. So I have the late Lamar Fike to thank for that. And he was a wonderful guy. So anyone who's an Elvis fan knows exactly who I'm talking about because he was part of that inner circle. And boy, did I make him some paninis. And he could never figure out the name of it. And he goes, can you make some of them panilla sandwiches? I was like,
wow,
okay,
that's be right back. For it. Well, what do you expect? Remember the minute burger maker? It was like a little round thing, and
you press it into
fun. Yeah, it was great for a kid, right? Make a burger really quick, and despite what everybody thinks, there is nothing better than actually having a burger that you make in pan. All right, and you might get it like nice and dark, and you have some of your caramelized onions, and you throw it on just some Wonder Bread, some ketchup, tastes fantastic. Now there is a burger joint over near Yale University that uses regular white bread. They put it in the toaster, and that's what they put their burgers on.
Wow.
Phenomenal. I wish I could remember the name of it. But people drive hundreds of miles just to go to that burger joint, much like people drive hundreds and thousands of miles just to experience Pink's or West Hut in New Jersey, So that's another book down the road. Stops at
I love a good hot dog.
Yeah, me too. There's nothing better than a good hot dog. And I would say if you were to put me and say, what is the hot dog to buy? I would go with Hebrew National.
Are those the ones with get a snap when you bite into them?
They answer to a higher authority.
No, there you go.
Remember those.
I have a great chili sauce for chili dogs recipe.
All right, wrote that.
I'm from Detroit, and if you had to pick one food that is indicative of Detroit, it's the chili dogs. We love our chili dogs, and I went to several places, sampled all theirs, looked at several recipes, and I came up with I think is the ultimate chili dog chili recipe. So, and next time I'm with Joey Fatone, who has his own hot dog and sausage restaurant down in Florida. I'm gonna make sure he tries my chili dog sauce.
Nice.
He
All right.
loves a
So
good dog. He loves a
what
good dog.
are some of the other people that are included in Eat Like a Rock Star?
Well, Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi is in it. Thelma Houston, the fabulous disco star. Tanya Tucker, who can sing herself some rock and roll. Tanya's in there. She's got these cookies that are, speaking of cookies, these amazing cookies. We've dubbed them, my cousins and I, we call them the Tanya Tucker crack cookies because you cannot quit eating them. They are so good. She makes a great cookie. Debbie Campbell, Glenn Campbell's daughter, she gave me a great recipe that she used to make for her dad, Glenn Campbell, a lot. And it's a casserole that has tortillas and shredded chicken and green peppers and, of course, Campbell's soup.
Oh,
what else would you have in
yeah.
a Campbell recipe but Campbell's soup? So that's a great recipe too. And
Nice.
who else do I have? I've got Randy Jones, the cowboy from the Village People, one of my best friends. He gave me a recipe for a fabulous appetizer and a cocktail, of course. So appetizers and cocktails are definitely Randy's thing. Definitely.
Okay. You go Mickey Dolenz. He got the Mickey D.
The Mickey D. I tried to get a real recipe out of him, and he said, "No, I want to write my own cookbook. My dad had a restaurant when I was growing up, and I want to save some of his recipes for my cookbook, my own cookbook." And I was like, "Can't you give me something?"
Come
Goes,
on.
I'll give you a cocktail. Okay, so I got a cocktail out of it. So that was
what is it? I understand there's 4 ounces of vodka in the Mickey D.
He didn't say how many you're supposed to drink, but
Take my advice. Triple it. 12 ounces of vodka. Have one of those. Never mind COVID-19. You'll be okay. You know what I mean? You'll be okay with it. Mickey D.
And I'm proud to have in Eat Like a Rock Star reunited the last incarnation of the Supremes. I have Mary Wilson, Sherry Payne, and Suze Green. I'll have recipes in here. So
that's great.
I reunited one group of the Supremes.
Who had presented the best meatloaf recipe?
Sherry Payne. Sherry Payne has a great meatloaf recipe. It makes a giant meatloaf, and is it good? It is so good. It's one of those meatloafs that 3 days later, when you want something for a sandwich, you slice a piece of the leftovers. Fabulous. It's got so much flavor in it.
This is great because what people don't understand about good meatloaf is that you could make a meatloaf sandwich and eat it cold.
Yes.
So what I used to do, you got your choice. You can do rye, but if all grandma had was the white bread, fine. She would take the meatloaf. God rest my grandmother. She was such a great cook. Grandma Jean, I love her so much. She would make this amazing meatloaf sandwiches. I would be thrilled to take those to school, and nobody could trade them away from me. You know how kids like to trade the lunch.
Oh yeah, exactly.
With American cheese on it. Sometimes it could have been mustard. Sometimes it could have been ketchup. Sometimes it could have been a little bit of mayonnaise. She'd always mix it up a little bit. So, to make it
that sounds
interesting. Great. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic.
My favorite is barbecue sauce on meatloaf. I'm a big barbecue sauce fan.
I like to take my meatloaf. I'll use some Italian breadcrumbs. I'll use a couple of eggs. Now with the eggs, you can actually put some hard boiled in there if you wanted to.
Some people do that. So you get a slice of white and yellow in the middle of it. I've seen that done.
But my secret sauce is taking the concentrated tomato sauce, like that you're going to make your tomato sauce out of.
Right.
It comes in a can, that concentrate. And I put it in there and I mix it into the meatloaf. And then as it cooks, it rises to the top and leaves a layer on top.
Oh, wow.
So that when you cut it, it adds that extra.
Nice kind of crunch on the outside.
Je ne sais quoi. And then, you could have, maybe you want to put some of those crispy onions. You know how you get those?
Oh yeah. The ones you put on top of a green bean casserole.
Right. Exactly. So there's some of the traditional Zach Martin recipes that, stand the test of time that everybody seems to love. Here's something, while we're under COVID-19 and under quarantine, this is great how we can all get together at the table. Obviously, we got to be careful because you don't want to overdo it. Otherwise, you're going to gain 15, 20 pounds before you know it.
Well, yes, exactly, which I think everyone did the first month that COVID was happening.
Yeah. So when I was first married to my wife, Emily, I had every Friday off. She would work. And every Friday when she got home from work, I'd pick her up at the bus stop. And then after a while, she's pregnant, a little belly out. I'd pick her up and I'd have a surprise for her. And guys, you can do this. It's so easy. It sounds like
Meatloaf.
Huh? What's that? I made her
meatloaf.
I made her the meatloaf. But I would also make different things with shake and bake because they came in all different flavors. So you can have your pork chops, you can have your chicken, you can have barbecue chicken, but those different flavors of shake and bake were terrific. So
Wow.
it's an easy way to make somebody happy. And you can go to the supermarket and you can get that white cut of the pork, which is a pork chop, which is boneless.
Right.
You can do things with those. So there's a myriad of things that you could do if you use a little bit of imagination. You look around you and see what you have, and you don't pass off on the shake and bake. That's good stuff, man.
That can be a go-to seasoning. There was a recipe that I saw that Shake and Bake put in a magazine where you take Shake and Bake and you put a couple tablespoons of tang in it to make it like
weird.
Like Shake and Bake Laurent.
Orange chicken. Yeah, orange chicken.
I got this brilliant idea. My friend Jack Cunningham and I were staying in my friend Beth Warnick's apartment. She had gone off to a Boz Scaggs concert. My air conditioning wasn't working. So Jack and I went to Beth's apartment and I got this brilliant idea. What if we took chicken and instead of shake and bake, we just take orange Jello and we've got like this orange flavoring on the outside. I nearly lit the kitchen on fire. Do not try and baste chicken with orange Jello. It catches a flame.
All right. So
it was a mess. That pan had to be thrown out.
All right. So here's some other things you could do. Old Bay seasoning is a staple. Old Bay seasoning. You have to. Seafood. Spaghetti.
But it'll go on anything.
Yeah, it goes on anything. I mean, eggs is fantastic. Oh, yeah. So mark my words. Old Bay seasoning is a must-have, especially under COVID-19 conditions. You want to get some good hot sauce. Now, I use the Tabasco. Tabasco comes in different flavors, so experiment with those. That's always good. Because those
the Chipotle one.
Chipotle one is very good.
My God, wow.
It does well with pot roast. Now that we're on the pot roast, who gave you the best pot roast recipe?
Walter Egan. Walter Egan gave me a great pot roast recipe, and it's encrusted with a lot of salt and pepper and spices, and it is so good. That's something that I never just was like, oh, I'll just make a pot roast. But I did it for the cookbook, and I loved it. And my guests who I served it to loved it. It's a great recipe.
Ladies, let me tell you, if you want to get yourself a man, make a good pot roast. I got a story about that. Scott Meany, the legendary Scott Meany, who is a good friend of mine. We worked together for a number of years. My mother-in-law makes a really good pot roast. First of all, she makes sure that she's got the right type of meat to make the pot roast.
Oh, yes.
And it simmers all day long. And then she's probably going to store-bought gravy, the beef gravy, throws it in there. That's it. But man, I'm telling you, it comes out great every time, just the way she does it with grandma's love, I guess. So it's to the point where anytime I'd call home, I go, what's for dinner? Pot roast. Scott would overhear. Tell your mother-in-law I'm coming over. Scott's coming over for pot roast. I'm telling you, man, every time she made pot roast, Scott was there. It's just it is really a great comfort food. And if you do it right, it's so tender.
It is so good.
It falls apart. And then that's another one that you can eat as a leftover if it's done right.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you can eat it cold.
One of the challenges I had was a recipe. This reminds me of when you said gravy. There was a recipe that Michelle Phillips from the Mamas and Papas, who I absolutely adore, gave me. And she was very specific about what you put in it. And she said, you make a gravy and you use Bovril. And I was like, Bovril. You'll find it. It's called Bovril, and it's Bovril. And it's produced in England. And import shops used to have it here. and they outlawed it when mad cow disease was
Yeah,
happening.
of course, it's made of cows. Yeah.
You cannot get it in America. So I called her. I said, what am I going to do? She goes, oh, you've got to have Bovril. You've got to have Bovril. So I went on the computer and I saw what it was. And it's basically a concentrated sort of like bouillon. Well, nowadays they also make bouillon cubes, which I'm used to, but they also have just like, is it just like beef or just like something? Just
yeah,
like
I've seen that. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
and you use that, and it is wonderful. You use the beef one, and you use it on chicken. It sounds bizarre, but it works, and it's so tasty. So tasty. So I had to make a substitution. I called her. I said, Michelle, I can't get Bovril. I'm not going to England to get it. And I said, this recipe is wonderful. I said, I'm sure it's a good substitute for it. So sometimes you have to be a little creative.
Yeah, you got to be creative. But, you know, good spice is the key to life, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, before we go, I gotta do a solo shot on your wall there.
My paintings. This is my Italian wall. So, of course, we have pizza here. And then we have a Venice view because I love Venice. Those are the boats in Murano, which is the glass-blowing island. And then this is up in Tuscany. Whoops, the orange one behind me. And those are all Mark Bego paintings. So if people ask, how did you stay sane during the COVID-19 nightmare? I wrote books, I cooked, and I painted. So
are those paintings for sale at markbego.com?
Well, for the right price, they are.
Yeah, right. Someone goes, man, I'm going to tell you, Mark, people are hurting so bad. I found this Jimi Hendrix piece in Woodstock at a restaurant, and it's beautiful. It's huge. I couldn't even tell you how big it is, but it's an amazing painting. And the artist was there, and I had a brief conversation with him, and he was willing. And he goes, I'm looking to buy it. And I go, what are you looking for? 18. I go, oh, 18,000 seems right. He goes, no, 1,800. I'm like, whoa.
Whoa.
Hello.
If is it I had the extra, in your living room?
You know, if as soon as I get the extra 18, I'm going to contact him and I'm going to get that painting because I don't think it's sold.
Maybe his price is
I have to. I'd feel bad spending anything.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
For that. That's just, you can't do that to people.
That's amazing.
Now, the one thing about Venice that I truly love, and people should always try to do this, is to go to have some lasagna. Got to have lasagna, and order at one of the good restaurants, maybe in St. Marcos Square. Order the sea bass.
Ooh,
the sea bass is done very nicely, and the vegetables around. I've actually have pictures of that food that I will send you, Mark Bego, so that you can see what it looks like.
That sounds wonderful. It was in Venice. I committed a crime against Italian food.
You ordered
I
pizza?
went to a restaurant and I ordered spaghetti followed by lasagna. And the waiter was like, no, you can't.
They're talking with their hands.
I'm from America. I came here for the pasta. I want 2 pasta dishes this meal. And he was like, oh, you Americans, Jesus.
Yeah. So anybody knows the lasagna is the appetizer.
Exactly. No, it was the main number for me.
Yeah. I mean,
and spaghetti as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can, they don't mind if you order a couple of appetizers and say, oh, that's it, or more wine. So that increases the bill and then a nice tip. But yeah, Venice is fantastic. One of these days, if I ever win the lottery, if I had $1 million, I would give you, here we go again.
Okay.
I would get you, Mary Wilson, Dave, my wife, Sophie, a couple other friends. We'd fly out to Venice. We go have the lasagna, the sea bass, and we fly right back.
I'm in. My passport is up to date.
Because you know why? Because it's just the craziest thing to do. You mean you just flew out for dinner and came back? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do that. Always wanted to do that.
That sounds wonderfully decadent. I'm in.
Turn around and then go right back for a few days after doing that.
I like it.
All right, Mark. Thank you very much for spending time. Eat Like a Rock Star. It is selling hotter than hotcakes on Amazon. It's number 3. I guarantee you by the end of the week, it's going to go up to the number 1 selling book in the United States, in the world. I just hope that Mark remembers me in his will, and but thank you so much, Mark. I got to tell you, man, you were one of the always a pleasure to talk to. I consider you one of my great friends. We've known each other
for
for a
years.
long time, for
Yes.
many years, almost
Through
20.
many radio stations.
Many radio stations, incarnations. We've always been there for each other. My phone, you always feel free to call. Love you very much.
Thank
Go
you.
to-
Love you too, Zach. You do a great job. You're
Thank
so
you.
personable and nice. It's always a pleasure.
You are an amazing guy. So just go to markbego.com, and everything is on your website or Amazon, right?
Exactly.
All right.
You can track me down.
And if someone wants to pay Mark $55,000 for that painting right behind him, it's a limited time offer. You got to do it within the next 24 hours for that price of $55,000.
If someone does an Italian restaurant and wants me to do a mural, I'm available.